Rain streaked across the terminal windows, smearing the city lights into ribbons of silver. Dr. Amara Lewis adjusted her sleek navy suit, phone pressed to her ear, voice low but firm, finalizing a deal that would merge her company's regional branches under one global name. She had 20 minutes before her flight, her own airline's flagship route, departed. Then the officer appeared. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside," he said. The crowd paused. His tone wasn't one of request, but authority sharpened by suspicion. Amara looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. "Is there a problem, officer? You tell me." He gestured to her bag. "Random security check." Random, the word hit like grit in her teeth. Around them, passengers, mostly white, filed through without pause. The officer's hand hovered over his holster. A silent dare. Amara exhaled, fingers trembling only slightly as she opened her carry-on. Inside, files, a laptop, and a copy of Forbes, her face on the cover. He didn't look, didn't need to. His smirk said everything. "People like you always got something to hide." The air tightened. A child stopped chewing her gum. The intercom announced final boarding for Flight 217, her flight, while the officer's radio crackled with static. Amara's phone buzzed in her hand. Assistant's voice, urgent, through the speaker. "Ma'am, the board's watching. What's happening?" Amara's throat burned as the officer reached for her wrist. Every camera turned, and for one suspended moment, she understood this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a message. Rain fell in thin needles against the glass walls of Terminal C, turning the tarmac into a blurred watercolor of red lights and moving shadows. The intercom droned boarding calls over the white noise of conversation. Dr. Amara Lewis walked with quiet precision, no rush, no arrogance, just the calm rhythm of someone used to control. Her heels clicked in time with her thoughts. Merger, investors, expansion, the kind of problems billion-dollar executives have. Her assistant's voice came through the earpiece. "Everything's confirmed. Ma'am, the board will be waiting in Geneva." That's when the uniform stepped into her path. "Ma'am, need you to step aside for a quick screening." He was tall, mid-40s, pale skin flushed under harsh fluorescent light. The airport officer's badge caught her reflection like a mirror she didn't ask to look into. Amara blinked. "I already cleared security, twice. Random selection." His tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. Her gaze drifted to the stream of passengers behind him. A line of white travelers breezing through the same gate without pause. "Random," she repeated. He shrugged. "Could be anybody. Just happens to be you." The words hit like a cold slap. She adjusted her posture, voice level. "I have a flight to board. Flight 217. He squinted at her boarding pass. "Unity Air." "Yes." A smirk tugged his mouth. "That, the one with the fancy CEO?" Amara didn't answer. He scanned her ticket again, slower this time, as if searching for a flaw. "You sure this is real? These things get forged all the time." Around them, people began to slow. A teenage boy lifted his phone, pretending to scroll, recording. A woman whispered to her husband. Amara kept her breathing steady. "Officer, you are delaying a passenger cleared by TSA and verified through airline systems." He tilted his head. "And yet, something feels off." She met his eyes, calm, unwavering. "Your feeling isn't the law." The silence between them turned razor-sharp. Then he reached for her bag. "Open it." "Excuse me, open it, or I will." Her hands trembled once before she controlled them. She unzipped the leather carry-on, revealing folders, a laptop, a copy of Forbes. Her own face stared back from the cover. Headline bold, "The Woman Redefining Aviation." He barely looked. Could have printed that at Kinko's. Gasps rippled through the small crowd. A flight attendant stepped closer, uncertain. "Officer," he cut her off. "Step back, ma'am. Let me handle this." Amara's phone buzzed in her palm. Her assistant's voice, muffled panic. "Dr. Lewis, the jet's taxiing. Do you need me to delay?" "Stay calm," she whispered, though her pulse thundered. The officer folded his arms. "What's in the laptop?" "Company data, confidential." He took a step forward. "Then I'll need to see it." Amara froze. "You don't have that authority." He smirked. "Lady, right now I got all the authority I need." Her voice, low and even. "You're making a mistake." His response came flat, practiced, the kind of tone born from habit, not thought. "You people always say that." The phrase struck like a blow. The terminal's hum dimmed into silence. Even the child clutching a teddy bear stopped fidgeting. Amara felt the heat rise behind her eyes. Humiliation, disbelief, fury braided into one unbearable cord. Then came the radio crackle. Unit 42. Possible non-compliance at Gate C17. Halverson, his nameplate finally visible, grabbed her wrist. Gasps. Cameras lifted. Amara didn't resist, didn't flinch. She just looked straight into the nearest phone lens.com, unblinking. The intercom voice overlapped the chaos. Final boarding call for Flight 217 to Geneva. The aircraft, her aircraft, began rolling down the runway. Its tail bore her airline's logo, a silver infinity ring against blue sky. The cuffs clicked cold against her skin, and for the first time in years, Dr. Amara Lewis couldn't move forward. The video hit the internet before Amara's fingerprints were even scanned by the time she walked out of the airport's holding room, wrists raw from steel, silence heavy as glass. Her name was already trending. Not Dr. Amara Lewis, CEO of Unity Air, just angry woman at the airport. Clips looped across every feed. Some slowed the footage to catch her expression. That flicker of disbelief turned to icy restraint. Others froze on the officer's hand gripping her arm. The comments scrolled like static, probably overreacting. Play stupid games. Wait, isn't she that airline lady? Good for her, standing tall. The internet didn't care who she was, only how she looked when humiliated. In her penthouse suite, 40 stories above the city, the morning light cut through blinds, striping her face in alternating bars of gold and gray. A tablet on the table played the footage again. Sound muted. Her PR director, Miriam, stood near the window, voice crisp but strained. We can't engage right now. Not until legal reviews. Any statement will just feed the fire. Amara finished, eyes still on the screen. I know. Miriam hesitated. The board wants to schedule an emergency call. They're concerned about optics. Amara's laugh was short, bitter. Optics? They should be concerned about racism in our own terminus. They think silence will protect the brand. Amara turned finally, voice low. Silence protects no one. It hides the truth. Miriam flinched but said nothing. Later that afternoon, the news cycle found its villain and its victim. Though which was which depended on the channel. One network played dramatic background music over Halverson's bodycam footage. The anchor narrating, an officer following protocol detained a woman who became confrontational. Another showed a split screen, Amara on one side, the officers' union rep on the other. The representative's voice oozed sympathy. We regret that feelings were hurt, but race had nothing to do with it. Our officers respond to behavior, not identity. Her lawyer, Marcus Eddings, muted the TV. They're building the narrative already. They always do. He studied her. We can sue. Civil rights, defamation, violation of procedure. But you have to be ready. They'll come for your character, your credentials, everything. Amara looked out over the skyline. They already have. Marcus sighed. Then let's make them regret it. The next morning, the airline's board meeting began on video conference. 12 squares of cautious faces, mostly older, mostly white. Chairman Whitmore's voice crackled through the speakers. Amara, we're deeply disturbed by what's happened, and we want to ensure you're disturbed. She cut in. By racism, or by the fact that it's public. A pause. Whitmore cleared his throat. We simply wish to minimize reputational damage, perhaps a formal apology. Apology. Her tone sharpened. For existing in my own terminal. Another director spoke carefully. Dr. Lewis, emotions are high. A calm statement might. Amara leaned forward, eyes steady on the camera. You think calm fixes systemic abuse. You think professionalism will make them see me as human. No one replied. The silence stretched, thick and cowardly. Finally, Whitmore murmured, we'll revisit this when tempers have cooled. The meeting ended. Amara sat alone, the reflection of her own face flickering in the dark screen. A woman both visible and unseen. By nightfall, the video had amassed 15 million views. Hashtags surged. Hashtag boarding while black. Hashtag justice for Amara. Hashtag unity, hypocrisy. Protesters gathered outside Unity Air headquarters holding signs under the cold drizzle. From her balcony, Amara watched the glow of news vans below, their lights cutting through the fog like interrogation beams. Her assistant, Janelle, joined her, coat draped around her shoulders. They're saying the officer's been placed on leave. Temporary, Amara murmured. They'll protect him. They always do. Janelle hesitated. You could go public. Speak your truth before they twist it further. Amara's gaze didn't leave the horizon. Not yet. Let them underestimate me first, ma'am. Amara turned, eyes burning with quiet resolve. They thought they stopped me from boarding a plane. They don't know I built the sky they fly through. 2 days later, Marcus walked into her office carrying a folder thick with documents. You need to see this. He spread them across her desk. Reports of prior complaints against Officer Halvorsen, 3 suppressed by administrative review. Amara skimmed, pulse tightening. He's done this before. Yes. And the department covered for him. She stared at the papers, then at Marcus. We leak one of these. Just one. He hesitated. You sure? Once it's out, there's no pulling back. I'm not pulling back. Her fingers pressed against the desk's edge, the surface cool beneath her skin. He thought I was powerless because I was polite. Let's remind them what power looks like when it stops asking. The next morning, a headline broke across every feed. Airport officer accused of racial profiling had prior complaints. Records show. Halvorsen's department issued a defensive statement within hours. The officer followed standard protocol. We reject unfounded claims of racial bias. But the damage was done. Amara watched the news in silence. Coffee untouched. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the window. Eyes calm, expression unreadable. Miriam burst in. They want a live statement. Amara, CNN, BBC, everyone. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she whispered almost to herself. They called it a random check. Now it's a pattern. Her phone buzzed again, an unknown number. She answered. Dr. Lewis. The voice was male, tired. This is Deputy Chief Merton. We're opening an internal inquiry into Officer Halvorsen's conduct. We'd appreciate your cooperation. Amara paused. You're not doing this because it's right. You're doing it because it's public. He didn't deny it. She ended the call. Outside her window, the city pulsed with noise, protests, traffic, the restless hum of consequence. Amara turned off the lights and sat in the darkness, the glow from her phone casting a faint halo on her face. For the first time since that day in the terminal, she smiled, not out of joy, but certainty. The storm had begun. Officer Brent Halvorsen's locker was plastered with old commendations, yellowing paper, a few faded newspaper clippings, the kind of self-made shrine that smelled of iron and ego. He stood before it that morning, scrolling through his phone. The video. Again. Millions of views, his name trending next to hers. He scoffed. Over a damn bag check, he muttered. From behind him, Sergeant Cole leaned against the doorway. You're a celebrity now. Halvorsen pocketed the phone, forcing a smirk. All press is good press. Cole shook his head. Chief's got heat. Civil rights people won't let this one go. They're digging. Let them dig, Halvorsen said. I didn't do anything wrong. But even as he said it, he felt the tremor, that sliver of doubt. The face of the woman at the terminal wouldn't leave his mind. Calm, unafraid, like she'd already known how this story would end. At City Hall, Deputy Chief Merton sat behind a desk stacked with reports. He rubbed his temples as the mayor's aide spoke through the phone line. We can't have another scandal. Get ahead of this. I've got internal affairs reviewing footage. Review faster. The line went dead. Merton exhaled and opened the newest file. Halvorsen's disciplinary record stared back at him. 3 prior complaints, all quietly closed with insufficient evidence. He knew the pattern. He'd signed off on 2 of them himself. Now the heat was on him, not just the officer. Across town, Amara's team was building momentum. Marcus spread files across her conference table. Union memos, public records requests, officer rosters. He's protected by a wall of silence, he said. Every complaint evaporates. The department signs non-disclosure agreements with victims, keeps everything buried. Amara scanned one statement, jaw tightening. A black teacher, a Latino mechanic, same terminal, same officer, Janelle whispered. He's been doing this for years. Amara looked up. Not anymore. Marcus hesitated. You sure you want to take the department head on? Once we name them, they'll counterattack. I built an airline in a world that said I couldn't. I'm done asking for permission to breathe. Meanwhile, Halvorsen was in his supervisor's office, posture rigid, tone defensive. I was following procedure, he said. Lieutenant Harris frowned. She had a valid boarding pass. Fake ones look valid. Come on, Brent. You detained the CEO of the airline. Halvorsen's face hardened. How was I supposed to know that? Maybe you didn't need to know who she was to treat her like a human being. Halvorsen's jaw clenched. So now I'm the villain because she's famous. Because she's right, Harris said quietly. You picked her out of a crowd for no reason you can explain. Halvorsen slammed his palm against the desk. I don't see color. okay? Harris's stare didn't waver. That's the problem. That night, the department issued a statement. The incident involving Officer Halvorsen is under review. We maintain confidence that he acted according to protocol. Social media exploded again. Screenshots, hashtags protests outside precinct headquarters. Inside, Halvorsen sat in the locker room alone, the noise from his phone like static under his skin. He opened the comments section of a news article. Suspend him, fire him, protect the badge. White lives matter too. He threw the phone into his locker at Unity Air headquarters. Amara joined Marcus and Miriam for a late meeting. The office was quiet except for the hum of the city beyond the windows. Marcus pointed to a document on the table. A leaked internal report from an anonymous source. Here, this memo lists profiling criteria, language like unverified ethnic passengers and non-cooperative appearances. Amara read the words slowly, disbelief giving way to anger. They wrote racism into policy. They'll deny it, Miriam said. Say it's been taken out of context. Then we publish the context. Marcus nodded grimly. We'll need a journalist we can trust. Someone who won't soften it. Amara met his gaze. Find them, tonight. By dawn, an investigative reporter had the memo. By noon, it was online. Headline: Airport officer followed unofficial profiling guidelines. Leaked document reveals. The fallout was immediate. City press conferences, union statements, the mayor promising transparency, the police chief on camera, jaw tight, voice rehearsed. We are investigating any alleged misconduct and reaffirm our commitment to equality. Amara watched from her office, the image reflected in the glass. They always reaffirm, she murmured. Never reform. Marcus said nothing. The silence between them carried years of history. Every microaggression dressed as professionalism, every door politely closed in her face. Halvorsen's phone buzzed again, this time from his wife, Brent. They're showing your picture on CNN. The kids saw. I told you. It's all lies, he snapped. Then why won't anyone stand up for you? He hesitated. No answer came. The silence on the other end stretched. Then she hung up. Halvorsen sank into the couch, the sound of rain outside echoing the static in his chest. For the first time, the certainty cracked. At that same moment, Amara stood before a group of employees gathered in the Unity Air lobby, young, diverse, watching her like she was more than a boss now. She spoke quietly but with precision. This isn't just about one officer. It's about every unchecked hand that thinks power is its own justification. We're not waiting for justice to arrive. We're building it. Applause rippled through the room. Cameras flashed, but when the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, she sat alone again, exhaustion seeping in where fury had lived. Janelle approached softly. They're calling you a symbol. Amara looked up, eyes shadowed. Symbols are easy to praise. People are harder to protect. Back at the precinct, Halvorsen was suspended pending review. He walked out through the back exit to avoid reporters. Cameras still caught the flash of his face, pale, drawn, eyes sunken from sleepless nights. A protester shouted from across the barricade, "Say her name." He flinched but didn't turn around. The noise followed him, into the rain, a chorus rising from the street, louder than any siren he'd ever commanded. And somewhere above, on a billboard lit by city light, an ad for Unity Air displayed its slogan in clean white letters, "The future flies equal." For once, he looked up, and didn't believe it. The boardroom was a panorama of glass and power. 12 men and women seated around a polished table reflecting the skyline. The morning sun made the city glitter like it had no conscience. Dr. Amara Lewis stood at the head of the room, her posture a sculpture of restraint. The chair beside her remained empty, a deliberate statement. Whitmore, the chairman, cleared his throat. Amara, thank you for coming on short notice. I think we can all agree the last week has been volatile. A polite murmur of agreement, a few averted eyes. Amara didn't sit. Volatile would imply this is weather. It's not, it's systemic. Whitmore blinked. Yes, of course, but the issue at hand is brand stability. Investors are nervous. We need to restore confidence. By silencing me? She asked. No one's silencing anyone, said Director Shaw, tapping his pen. We're suggesting a strategic pause. Step back from public commentary until the noise dies down. She finished for him, until the world forgets I was handcuffed in my own terminal. A brittle silence followed. Shaw sighed. Look, Amara, perception is currency. You're the face of this company. Every headline has your name attached. The board feels The board feels uncomfortable, she interrupted. Say it. Shaw glanced at Whitmore, then back at her. We're simply trying to prevent further escalation. Amara leaned forward, voice low, steady. What you call escalation, I call exposure. You built this airline on the illusion of equality. I made it real. And when reality got inconvenient, you called it bad PR. Director Langley, an older woman with silver hair, spoke softly. No one questions your achievements, Amara. But we have to consider the shareholders' perspective. Amara turned toward her. Shareholders live off the profits of the system that humiliated me. I won't protect their comfort at the cost of my dignity. Whitmore raised his hand. Let's remain professional. Professionalism is what they demanded while putting me in handcuffs, she said sharply. Do you know what it feels like to have your humanity debated as a liability on a balance sheet? The words hung in the air, heavy and echoing. No one answered. After the meeting adjourned, Whitmore approached her quietly. Off the record, Amara, you're making this personal. She looked at him, eyes cold. It is personal when they grab your wrist instead of your boarding pass. He sighed. You're risking your position. Amara smiled thinly. Then I'll risk it. She walked out before he could respond. In the elevator, her phone buzzed. Marcus again. They're circling you, he said. Anonymous leaks about your temperament. Someone's feeding the media. From the board, almost certainly. She exhaled through her nose, watching the numbers descend. They want to paint me emotionally unstable. The stereotype writes itself. Marcus paused. Then, flip it. Let them talk while you lead. At noon, Amara stepped onto the main floor of Unity Air's corporate tower. Hundreds of employees had gathered after the leaked memo hit another front page. Journalists lingered by the lobby doors. She raised her hand for silence. I know what they're saying about me, she began, her voice resonant but controlled. That I'm angry, that I'm divisive, that I'm jeopardizing this company's future. But the future doesn't belong to fear. It belongs to those who refuse to bow to it. A ripple moved through the crowd. She continued, some of you have lived versions of this story, turned away, talked over, told to be grateful for less. Today, I'm telling you, this company will not survive on silence. Applause broke out. Employees stood taller. Janelle, near the front, mouthed silently, you're changing it. Upstairs, Whitmore watched the scene from behind tinted glass, jaw tight. He turned to Director Shaw. She's turning this into a movement. Shaw's expression was grim. Then, we either back her or bury her, and if we bury her, we'd better hope she doesn't take us all down with her. That evening, Amara met Marcus and Miriam in a dim cafe near the riverfront, Neutral Ground. Neutral ground. Marcus laid out the next step. The city council's considering a motion for independent review of airport policing. Your voice could push it through. Miriam looked uneasy. Going public again will enrage the board. They'll call it insubordination. Amara stirred her tea slowly. They can call it whatever makes them sleep at night. I'm done negotiating my existence. Marcus nodded. We'll prepare a statement for the hearing. You speak, I'll handle the legal fallout. Miriam exhaled. Then, it's official. You're not just the CEO now, you're the headline. Amara smiled faintly. Good, let them read. Across town, Officer Halverson sat in his apartment, television flickering across his face. The news anchor's voice filled the room. Unity Air CEO Dr. Amara Lewis has become a symbol for corporate accountability after being detained by airport security last week. Sources confirm the department is under federal investigation for potential bias in enforcement. He muted the screen. His reflection stared back from the dark glass. Tired, hollow, the same pride that once justified everything now felt like weight. On the table lay a letter from his union rep. Temporary suspension pending inquiry. He crumpled it in his fist. Back in her office, Amara stood alone at the window, city lights pulsing below. Her reflection merged with the skyline, power and fragility entwined. Janelle knocked softly and entered. Ma'am, you did it. The council just voted for an independent review. Amara didn't turn. Justice isn't the vote. It's what happens after the cameras leave. Janelle hesitated. Still, it's a start. Amara nodded, eyes distant. A start costs something. Her phone buzzed again. An email from Whitmore. Emergency board session. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Attendance mandatory. She smiled without humor. Let them come. The next morning, the board gathered again, but this time, cameras were waiting outside. Reporters shouted her name as she entered the glass doors. Inside, Whitmore's face was pale with corporate panic. Amara, Did you authorize that leak to the press about internal policies? She met his gaze evenly. No, but I didn't stop it either. You jeopardized confidential information. I protected the truth, she said. Confidentiality protects injustice. The room erupted in overlapping voices. Accusations, fear, damage control. Amara raised her hand. Silence fell. Gentlemen, she said, voice cutting through the noise. You've spent years teaching me how to play this game. Today, I stopped playing. Whitmore's pen slipped from his fingers. Amara gathered her folder, turned, and walked out past the cameras, past the whispers, into the daylight. Her car was waiting. She didn't look back, because behind her, the boardroom, once her battlefield, was already collapsing under its own silence. By dawn, her name was no longer just trending, it was orbiting. Every network banner carried her image. CEO defies board amid bias scandal. Some framed her as a hero, others called her reckless, but every outlet agreed on one thing: Amara Lewis had detonated the polite fiction of corporate neutrality. She didn't watch the coverage, Miriam did. They're dissecting every sentence, Miriam said, phone pressed to her ear. Cable anchors, talk shows, think pieces. They're calling it the Lewis Doctrine. Amara's tone was flat. They needed a doctrine because the truth made them uncomfortable. Public opinion split, Miriam continued. Half think you're a crusader, half think you've lost control. Amara smiled faintly. Good balance means they're listening. By noon, the building lobby was a siege zone. Reporters clustered behind barricades, lights glaring like interrogation lamps. Employees whispered in corridors. AWA fear, admiration, envy, indistinguishable currents of power. Janelle entered with a tablet. Requests for interviews from CNN, Reuters, The Atlantic, even Forbes. What should I say? Amara didn't look up from her paperwork. Decline them all. Janelle blinked. All of them. I don't debate my own humanity on camera, Amara said. They'll twist it into performance. Outside, the city was caught between protest and spectacle. Supporters held signs. Justice at 30,000 feet. We stand with Amara. Across the street, critics gathered with their own banners. Keep politics out of business. CEOs aren't activists. A news drone hovered above, capturing symmetry to crowds divided by one street, united only by noise. Meanwhile, in a studio uptown, a round table of analysts dissected her every move. She's destabilizing investor confidence, said one. Suit 2, perfect. She's redefining leadership ethics, countered another. A third leaned forward. Let's be honest. Would this story exist if she weren't a black woman? The air froze. On-screen silence spoke louder than commentary. Amara spent the evening in her office, blinds drawn, eyes on a single document, the company's internal policy on security cooperation. That it was written in dense corporate code, but the meaning was clear. The company enabled profiling under the guise of operational discretion. Marcus entered quietly. They're going to scapegoat you. Asterisk, I know. They'll say you compromised confidentiality, violated ethics, endangered stockholders. I did none of those things. They'll say you did anyway. Amara closed the folder. Then we'll make truth louder. Marcus dropped a folder on her desk. The Department of Transportation's review panel meets next week. They've invited you as an independent witness. Witness, not defendant. For now. 3 days later, the hearing hall was a theater of formality. Wooden panels, raised seal, microphones aligned like weapons. The press filled every seat. When Amara entered, flashbulbs detonated. She walked slowly, each step measured, every breath deliberate. The chairwoman of the panel, Judge Patel, gestured. Dr. Lewis, please take your seat. Amara sat. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the polished table. Patel began. You were detained at the airport by Officer Eric Halvorsen. You alleged discriminatory treatment. You also claim systemic negligence by both the department and your company. Is that correct? Yes, Amara replied, but I don't allege. I demonstrate. She opened a folder. Inside were printed reports, patterns of detainment, employee complaints, suppressed audit data, each page a weaponized fact. The audience are us. TLED. Patel leaned forward. These documents, how did you obtain them? They were internal, Amara said, and they were hidden. I was the CEO. I had access. Some might call that unauthorized disclosure. Truth doesn't require authorization. Across the aisle, the department's attorney rose, a lean man with a calm predator's smile. Dr. Lewis, is it true that your public statements have negatively affected your company's stock value? Yes. And do you accept responsibility for that loss? I accept responsibility for exposing the lie that caused it. A murmur rippled through the gallery. The attorney stepped closer. You've positioned yourself as a victim of discrimination, yet you wielded immense power. Isn't that a contradiction? Amara met his gaze without blinking. Power doesn't erase prejudice. It only changes the form it takes. Outside, the networks were broadcasting live. Every word became headline. Every pause became narrative. On one channel, a pundit sneered, "She's turning a personal inconvenience into a moral crusade." On another, a commentator said, "This isn't a crusade, it's a mirror." Back inside, the hearing adjourned briefly. Marcus met her in the hallway. "They're rattled," he said. "The attorney didn't expect you to use corporate data against your own board." Amara wiped her hands slowly. "They built their fortress from lies. I just held up a mirror." That night, news broke. Leaked footage from the airport security camera, the moment of arrest. The video spread like wildfire. The frame showed Amara standing calm, composed, Helverson grabbing her wrist, the startled bystander shouting, "She's the CEO," and then silence. The officer's face was clear. The aggression was unmistakable by midnight. The footage had reached 50 million views. Public outrage surged again. But this time, not even her critics could pivot the narrative. The images were absolute. At 2 a.m., Halverson's lawyer called Marcus privately. "He wants to meet her," he said. Marcus hesitated. "Why?" "He says he needs to say something." Face to face, the next morning, Amara sat in a small conference room. No cameras, no press. Halvorsen entered, wearing plain clothes, eyes hollowed by sleeplessness. He didn't sit at first, just stood, staring at her. "Finally, I thought I was doing my job." "You were," she said quietly. "That's the problem." He swallowed. "I saw a profile, not a person. Training makes it automatic, then it's time to unlearn it." Silence thickened between them. He whispered, "They suspended me. I'm not your judge, but you could be." She shook her head. "No. I'm the proof you never looked for." He nodded slowly, then left without another word. That evening, Marcus turned on the television. The headline read, "Federal Oversight Committee opens inquiry into racial profiling in aviation security." Below it, Unity Air CEO resigns, vows to build reform coalition. He looked at her. "You're stepping down." "Yes," Amara said. "You can't reform a system while sitting on its throne." Outside her window, the city lights reflected off the river, fractured, shifting, beautiful. She spoke softly, more to herself than to anyone else. "Let them have their empire. I'll build the future." The airport boardroom looked nothing like a place of justice. Glass walls, chrome edges, an air-conditioned silence built for secrecy. Yet that morning, it became a battleground. Amara stood at the end of the long table, a black box in her hands, the same kind used in airplanes, a flight data recorder. This one wasn't from a crash, it was from the security system that had recorded her arrest. Across from her sat the executives who once called her ma'am and Madam Chair. Now, their expressions were hard, defensive, rehearsed. Marcus whispered, "They think you're bluffing." Amara placed the black box on the table. "Then let's see how deep their confidence flies." "Dr. Lewis," said Board Chair Emerson, voice polished with authority, "we're here to discuss the impact of your actions on Unity Air's public image." Amara didn't flinch. "The impact came from the truth. I only revealed it. Your unauthorized disclosure of internal audits exposed systemic bias," she cut in. "Bias you all knew about and buried under security discretion." A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. "That's a serious accusation. It's a documented fact." She tapped the black box. "Every flight, every arrest, every complaint. You built your empire on silence. I'm here to play back what you erased." Janelle connected the recorder to the projection system. The room dimmed as data logs scrolled onto the screen. Timestamps, voice transcriptions, system alerts. Then came the audio, the securitydispatchers.com tone, Halvorsen's voice, identifying Amara as a possible imposter, and the supervisor's response, cold, mechanical, "Proceed. Verify through detainment if uncertain." Each word was a nail in the coffin. One board member exhaled sharply, another shifted in her seat. Amara watched them, emotionless. When the clip ended, silence swallowed the room. Finally, Emerson leaned forward. "This data wasn't meant for public release." "That's exactly why it needs to be," she said. "You built a system that criminalized identity. Now it's public property." Marcus whispered. They'll move to expel you. I expect nothing less. Within minutes, the vote began, a ritual of cowardice disguised as governance. Motion to remove Dr. Lewis as Chief Executive Officer. Emerson declared. 10, hands lifted. 3, hesitated. 1, trembled. The motion carried. Amara's title was gone. Her power, not so much as she left the room. A small voice called after her. Janelle, they can take your title, but they can't erase what you built, she said. I downloaded everything, every record, every case like yours. Amara stopped. You did what? Janelle handed her a drive. The black box was just one piece. This is the flight log for an entire industry. Amara looked at her, half disbelief, half gratitude. You understand what this means? Janelle nodded. That we're not done. Later that night, the world began to shift again. An anonymous leak appeared on major platforms. #BlackBoxFiles. The documents detailed racial discrepancies across multiple airlines, airports, and private security firms. The data was undeniable. The coverage exploded. Every statistic was a wound laid bare. Black passengers detained 6 times more often, complaints routinely dismissed, oversight committees composed of identical faces. Reporters swarmed federal offices, senators demanded hearings, and in the middle of it all, one name kept resurfacing. Amara Lewis. Marcus called her. You started a revolution. No, she said quietly, standing by her apartment window. I just stopped whispering. Outside, the city's night skyline pulsed with screens showing her face, her defiance. But inside, she felt the exhaustion of someone who'd fought too long. She pressed her palm to the glass. They'll fight back harder. They already are, Marcus replied. They're saying it's a data breach, threatening lawsuits. Amara smiled without humor. Good, that means they're afraid. 2 days later, Emerson appeared on live television. He was composed, careful, and poisonous. Dr. Lewis acted alone. He said, her recent actions represent a personal vendetta, not the values of this company. Unity Air condemns her misuse of confidential data. The statement spread like wildfire. Within hours, hashtags turned divided. #Amara Variable versus #Amara the liability. She expected it. The world loved heroes until they became inconvenient. At 11 p.m. There was a knock on her door. It was Janelle, disheveled, eyes red. They fired me, she said. Effective immediately. No severance. Amara's voice softened. I'm sorry. Don't be. I knew it was coming. Janelle placed another drive on the table. Before they locked me out, I found something else. Internal memos between Emerson and ADHS liaison. They coordinated the profiling program together. Amara's pulse steadied. Proof. Janelle confirmed. The next morning, Amara called Marcus. Schedule a press briefing. Independent venue. No corporate presence, you sure? They'll call it grandstanding. Then let them. At the briefing, a hall full of cameras waited. Amara walked onto the stage in a simple black suit. No podium. No teleprompter. She spoke clearly, voiced steady but laced with fire. For years, they told us the system was too big to change. They said fairness would come after safety, after profit, after convenience. They were wrong. She held up the memo. This is their blueprint for discrimination. Signed, dated, approved. The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions. One voice cut through. Dr. Lewis, are you afraid? She met the lens head. Fear built their walls. I build windows. By midnight, Emerson's resignation leaked. The DHS liaison was under investigation. And the government announced a full audit of airport security partnerships. Marcus texted her. They're collapsing from the inside. She didn't reply. She sat in silence, staring out her window again. The same skyline, but somehow, it looked cleaner. Janelle joined her on the couch, exhaustion in her eyes. You won. Amara exhaled slowly. No, I started something I'll never see finished. Outside, rain began to fall. Each droplet hit the glass like a pulse. She whispered, the black box remembers everything. Janelle looked over. Even us. Amara nodded. Especially us. The hearing was held in Washington. Cameras lined the marble corridor like rifles pointed at truth. Every network was broadcasting live. This wasn't just an inquiry anymore. It was a spectacle. Amara stepped out of the black car, flanked by Marcus and Janelle. Protesters filled both sides of the steps, one side chanting her name, the other holding placards demanding prosecution. Flashbulbs burst. Reporters shouted questions that collided in the air. Did you leak the data? Are you cooperating with the investigation? Is this the end of Unity Air? She kept walking. Silence was her armor. Inside, the Senate Oversight Chamber was freezing deliberate, she thought, to make everyone uncomfortable. Senator Hughes, chair of the committee, adjusted his glasses and said flatly, Dr. Lewis, please take your seat. You understand the nature of these proceedings. Yes, she said. I understand too well. He nodded toward the stack of documents before him. You have been accused of disclosing proprietary security data in violation of federal confidentiality statutes. Do you deny this? I don't deny it. I expose why it had to be done. A murmur rippled through the room. Cameras zoomed closer. Let's be clear, Hughes said. You're admitting you broke the law. Amara's eyes didn't waver. The law protected a system that broke people. Across the room sat the new interim CEO of Unity Air, a man chosen for his silence. Emerson was absent, rumored to be under federal investigation. Hughes continued, You claim systemic profiling. We've reviewed the #blackbox files. But the question remains, how much of this can be verified? Janelle stood, holding a thin folder. Everything. Each file is cross-referenced with official records. You'll find the metadata matches the department's archives exactly. Hughes frowned. And you are Janelle Carter, Data Compliance Officer, formerly of Unity Air, fired after assisting Dr. Lewis, noted, Hughes said, scribbling. But understand, this isn't a courtroom. It's an inquiry into motives, not morality. Amara leaned forward. Then perhaps the wrong people are under oath. A senator to Hughes' right muttered, She's grandstanding. Hughes ignored him. Dr. Lewis, explain to this committee why you, as a highly paid, powerful executive, believe you were a victim. The words landed like a blade. Amara didn't blink, because power doesn't shield you from prejudice. It only delays its aim. It finds you eventually in airports, boardrooms, and Senate hearings just like this. Her voice was steady, but the silence that followed was trembling. Outside, screens across the country streamed the exchange. In airports, passengers paused mid-walk to listen. In offices, black employees gathered around monitors in quiet solidarity. Then one precinct break room, a young officer watched and whispered, She's right. The world was listening, some in rage, some in revelation. The committee took recess. In the hallway, Marcus whispered, You just turned that hearing into history. Amara replied, History is written by those who outlast the spin. When the session resumed, the focus shifted. Hughes turned to the DHS representative. Explain these internal memos authorizing profiling discretion in high-traffic zones. The official cleared his throat. Those were operational recommendations, not directives. Yet they were implemented nationwide. The man hesitated. For efficiency, Hughes' voice sharpened. Efficiency that disproportionately targeted minority travelers. The official faltered. That wasn't the intent. Amara interjected. Intent doesn't comfort those humiliated in public terminals. The gallery erupted in applause before the gavel slammed for order. Hughes looked directly at her. Dr. Lewis, you may continue. She stood. This isn't just about one officer or one arrest. It's about a culture that teaches suspicion as policy. I built a company believing merit could outfly bias, but I was wrong. The system doesn't malfunction. It performs exactly as designed. The sentence echoed through the chamber. When the hearing adjourned, journalists swarmed the steps. A CNN reporter asked, Dr. Lewis, what outcome do you expect? Accountability, she said, and not the kind that ends with a resignation. Another shouted, Do you regret leaking the files? She turned toward the camera. I regret trusting silence. That evening, the Senate released an interim statement. Preliminary evidence confirms systemic racial profiling within multiple aviation security frameworks. Further criminal inquiry authorized. By morning, the DHS liaison resigned. 2 executives from Unity Air were subpoenaed. Emerson's name appeared on a sealed indictment, and Amara, now labeled the whistleblower CEO, became a symbol none of them could control. Marcus arrived at her apartment with takeout and a quiet expression. You just cracked open an industry, he said. She didn't smile. They'll rebuild it, Marcus. They always do, but maybe now, they'll build it under light. He nodded. The networks want a primetime interview. No, he blinked. Why not? Because if I keep talking, they'll turn it into entertainment. Let the documents speak. Later that night, she walked along the riverfront. The same skyline, calmer now, the air thick with change. Her reflection shimmered against the water. Tired eyes, steady posture, a voice behind her. Dr. Lewis. She turned. It was Helverson, He approached slowly. No uniform, just a man carrying the weight of consequence. I testified, he said, told them the truth, about the training, the quotas, everything. She studied him for a moment. That must have cost you. It did. And you still did it. I owed it to the mirror you held up. They stood in silence. City noise far away. People will forget my name, she said. He shook his head. No, they'll remember what you made them see. As he left, she looked back at the water, at her faint reflection merging with the lights, fractured, imperfect, real. A whisper escaped her lips, barely audible. Reckoning isn't justice, it's the start of it. 3 weeks after the hearing, Unity Air bled value by the hour. Stock prices plummeted. Investors withdrew. Partners suspended contracts. What had once been a fortress of reputation was now a public liability. The board convened emergency meetings behind closed doors. But every minute of silence outside those walls was another nail in the coffin. The media didn't need leaks anymore. The implosion was visible in real time. Marcus called Amara one morning, voice low. It's happening. The SEC filed a motion to freeze Unity's executive assets. Emerson's house was searched at dawn. She stared out her window. Poetic justice? He hesitated. You don't sound relieved. I'm not. Empires don't fall cleanly. They drag the innocent down to Pacasta City. Employees gathered in the once busy headquarters lobby, boxes stacked, badges turned in, eyes hollow. Some glanced up when Amara entered. Whispers rippled through the crowd. That's her, the one who started all this. She ignored the stairs and went straight to the elevator. Inside the 30th floor boardroom. The air was stale, perfume, panic, and paper. A few surviving board members sat scattered like ghosts. Dr. Lewis, one began, you shouldn't be here. Neither should corruption, she replied, but it always finds a seat. They exchanged glances. Another leaned forward. The company's finished. We're negotiating asset surrender. The government's appointing a receiver. Amara folded her arms. Then I'll make one last request. A bitter laugh. You're in no position to request transparency, she interrupted. Before this building goes dark, every record, every payroll, every flight log should be archived for the public. No more secrecy. You want to burn what's left? No, I want to disinfect it. Marcus met her outside after. They won't comply. They will, she said, because their lawyers will tell them it's safer than obstruction. He studied her. You've become fluent in their language. I had to, she said, to destroy it. That evening, she received a call from an unknown number. The voice was calm, professional. Dr. Lewis, this is Special Counsel Ramirez, Department of Justice. We're expanding the investigation into federal contracting fraud. You'll be needed as a cooperating witness. She paused. Cooperating, yes. We believe your testimony will be pivotal. You'll be protected. Amara looked around her empty apartment. Boxes half-packed. Memories turned temporary. Protected from what? A pause. From the system you exposed. The line went dead. The next day, the headlines changed tone. Unity Air collapses under federal probe. CEO turned whistleblower to testify. The black box files. Trigger Aviation Reform Act. Eats. Headline felt less like victory and more like eulogy. Then the corner of one article was a small photo. A maintenance worker named James Porter, detained 2 years ago under the same discretionary policy. He'd lost his job, home, and life savings. Amara read the caption twice, then whispered, "This was never about me." A week later, she appeared before the cameras again, not as an executive, not as a celebrity, but as a witness under oath. The Justice Department conference room was stripped of grandeur, plain walls, fluorescent light, the hum of ventilation. Ramirez sat opposite her. Dr. Lewis, for the record, can you confirm your role in authorizing the initial data access? I can, she said, and I can confirm that access was used to expose racial discrimination codified as security. He nodded. You understand that without your intervention, this case wouldn't exist. I also understand that because of it, thousands lost their jobs, she said quietly. Justice isn't free. Ramirez leaned forward. Would you do it again? She met his gaze. Every time. Outside, reporters waited as usual. But this time, there were fewer of them. The story was already morphing into legislation, headlines, documentaries. The world had moved on. Marcus approached with 2 coffees. You look tired. I am, she said. Justice is heavy work. He handed her a folder. You've been invited to speak at the United Nations Aviation Ethics Summit next month. She didn't take it. Let someone else speak. It's their turn now. That night, she visited the old terminal where it had all begun. It was nearly empty, the departure board flickering, janitors sweeping quietly. She walked past the gate where she'd been stopped, her steps echoing against tile and memory. A uniformed guard recognized her. "Dr. Lewis, you're the reason they changed the protocol. We don't do random ID checks anymore." Amara smiled faintly. Then maybe it was worth it. The guard hesitated. Some of us needed someone to say it out loud. She nodded, turned, and kept walking, toward the end of the corridor, toward silence. Later, on her flight home, she sat by the window as the plane ascended through the clouds. The city lights fell away beneath her, scattered like embers of an empire that finally burned out. Her phone buzzed. A text from Janelle. New airline coalition, forming inclusive policies, employer-led governance, want to help draft the charter. Amara stared at the message. For a long time, she didn't type. Then, yes. But this time, no thrones, just wings. She looked out the window again, the clouds parting into dawn. For the first time in months, the sky felt clean. The first public hearing under the new Aviation Ethics Reform Act was broadcast live. Cameras lined the corridors. Reporters whispered like vultures around fresh truth. Amara waited in the wings, not as the accused, not as the symbol, but as precedent. The moderator called her name. She walked to the witness table, papers in hand, no entourage, no counsel. The room hushed. A senator adjusted his glasses. "Dr. Lewis, history will remember your name. Do you have an opening statement?" She glanced at the microphone, then at the crowd of policy writers, activists, and former employees. "I'm not here to be remembered," she said. "I'm here so no one else has to be." Silence. Then cameras clicked. The senator continued. "Dr. Lewis, you were once part of Unity Air's executive board. Today you represent the independent commission overseeing its dismantling. What have you learned?" "That reform isn't moral," she said. "It's structural. We don't fix people, we fix incentives." He nodded slowly. "And your recommendation? Accountability that doesn't depend on guilt, only verification. Every system should assume corruption is possible, not rare." The panel scribbled notes. After hours of testimony, they recessed. Amara stepped into the hallway, where Janelle waited. "You sounded like a manifesto," Janelle said. Amara exhaled. "Manifestos get ignored. Blueprints get built. I'm switching genres." Janelle smiled faintly. "The world finally heard you." Amara shook her head. "The world finally listened to itself. I just held the mirror." That evening, news outlets dissected her every sentence. Analysts debated whether she was a hero, a whistleblower, or just a symptom of decay. Amara didn't watch. Instead, she sat in her apartment, surrounded by flight manifests, employee rosters, and draft frameworks for the Coalition for Ethical Aviation. Marcus joined her, dropping 2 mugs of tea on the table. "The summit's in Geneva. You're on the keynote list." "I told them I'm done speaking," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "They'll quote you regardless." She smirked. "Then they can quote the silence." A week later, she boarded a flight, one of the first under the new coalition's joint venture, Skyline Collective. Uniforms were redesigned, not for branding, but equality. Every badge the same color, every role listed in plain text, no titles, only functions. The attendant smiled. "Welcome aboard, Dr. Lewis." Amara looked around the cabin. Diverse crew.com passengers, no hierarchy visible. "You don't have to call me doctor." The attendant grinned. "Habit dies slow." Mid-flight, turbulence struck. The lights flickered. The captain's voice came over the intercom, steady and composed. "Ladies and gentlemen, minor atmospheric disturbance, remain seated." The plane steadied. Amara watched the crew. No panic, no condescension, no racial undertones in tone or posture. Just professionalism. Marcus texted from across the aisle. "Symbolic, isn't it? We hit turbulence and stay level." She replied. "That's what justice looks like, stability, not spectacle." When they landed, reporters were waiting again. One asked, "Dr. Lewis, is it true the new coalition plans to name its code of ethics after you?" She didn't stop walking. Codes don't need names, they need adherence. Another shouted, "What's your legacy?" She paused briefly, turning just enough for the cameras to catch the light on her face. "Landing safely, that's legacy enough." Months passed. The reform spread beyond aviation, into banking, policing, education. Systems once protected by opacity now operated under audit by default. A cultural reset was underway, not by force, but fatigue. The public had grown allergic to deception. Amara lived quietly by then. No interviews, no conferences. She taught part-time at a public university, a course titled Institutional Enrollment filled in hours. On the first day, a student asked, "Were you scared back then?" Amara thought for a long moment. "No," she said. "Fear is the luxury of the innocent. I was responsible." One evening, she returned home to find a letter waiting, embossed, no signature. Inside was a single sentence. "You restored what protocol erased." No sender, no logo, only weight. She placed it in a drawer, next to her old Unity Air ID badge, the last artifact of a system that had devoured itself. At dawn, she walked along the pier. The sun bled across the horizon, quiet, deliberate. Planes cut through the distance, white streaks over calm water. Each contrail vanished into sky, transient, clean, anonymous. She whispered, "That's how it should be." Then turned away, not watching them fade. The airport looked different now, not newer, simpler. The marble floors no longer reflected corporate excess. The posters on the walls showed people, not logos. Transparency, accountability, humanity. 3 words that once felt ornamental, now read like infrastructure. Amara passed through security unnoticed. No VIP lane, no escort, just another traveler. The absence of recognition felt like peace. The scanner beeped. She froze instinctively, a reflex born from memory. "Ma'am, could you step aside?" the officer said. His tone wasn't hostile, just procedural. She turned, a young officer, calm eyes, hand resting lightly near his belt but not on it. He scanned her carry-on again, found nothing unusual, then nodded. "Apologies, random flag." "You're clear." Amara smiled faintly. "No apologies needed." He hesitated. "You look familiar." "I used to fly a lot," she said. He returned her bag. "Well, ma'am, thank you for your patience." No power trip, no assumption, just civility. And that was when she realized this was the real victory. Not headlines, not applause, just the normalization of decency. At gate 32, the intercom crackled. Final boarding for Skyline Flight 807 to London, the same route where everything had once unraveled. She boarded quietly, seat to a window view. The hum of the engines carried a kind of nostalgia, not for the trauma, but for the transformation that followed. The captain's voice came through, steady, confident. "Good evening, passengers. We'd like to thank you for trusting Skyline Collective, where every flight is a shared responsibility." Amara looked up. The pilot was a black woman. Calm/professional. No spectacle, just presence. She exhaled slowly. The circle had closed. Midway through the flight, Marcus texted from the ground. "Marcus, Parliament passed the final oversight clause. It's done." Amara, "Good. Maybe now I can actually take a vacation." Marcus, "You earned it 10 times over." Amara, "No one earns equality. We just stop excusing the lack of it." She put her phone away. Outside, clouds rippled under the moonlight, vast, ungoverned, indifferent. Later, the attendant passed by. "Dr. Lewis, would you like champagne?" No titles. Remember, the attendant grinned. Habit dies slow. She took water instead. Clear, simple, sufficient. Landing was smooth. The wheels touched down with a quiet grace that no one clapped for. Justice didn't need applause. It needed continuation. As passengers gathered their things, the woman seated beside her, middle-aged, soft-spoken, turned and said, "You remind me of someone. Were you ever on the news?" "Once," Amara said. The woman smiled. "You must have done something right. We fly easier now." Amara nodded, eyes glassy. "That's all I wanted." Outside the terminal, rain began to fall. Not a storm, just enough to cleanse. She walked toward the exit, coat collar up, suitcase rolling behind her. No press, no audience. Across the road, a billboard caught her eye. Fair Skies Initiative inspired by the Unity incident. She stared for a moment. The irony didn't sting anymore. Systems adapt, memory fades, but principle, if planted deep enough, persists. She called Janelle, still awake. "Barely you landed." "Yes, how's it feel?" "Like a sequel I don't need to write." Janelle laughed softly. "You always did prefer closure over credit. I prefer peace over performance. Same difference now." They hung up. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was earned. At her hotel, Amara opened her laptop. Dozens of unread emails, invitations, endorsements, think tank offers. She deleted them all, then opened a blank document. Title, Operational Framework, for ethical transport systems, v1.0. She typed slowly. No policy can replace humanity, but policy can protect it. She saved it, closed the screen, and turned off the light. The next morning, she walked through the London terminal again, unnoticed, unguarded. A young girl tugged her mother's sleeve near a window. "Mom, look, it's the woman from the fairness posters." The mother smiled. "She's the reason you can fly anywhere you dream, baby." Amara heard it, didn't turn around, just smiled faintly and kept walking. Outside, planes roared overhead, not symbols anymore, just vehicles of motion. She thought of every name erased, every policy rewritten, every hand that chose restraint instead of dominance. The sun broke through the mist, lighting the runway. And in that quiet golden hour, Amara Lewis, the woman once humiliated for existing in the wrong space, stepped into a world that had finally begun to correct its altitude. Not perfect skies, but clear ones,